My name is Marc Pattinson. I work for GAC in a French group, and I was asked to moderate this session today because currently we're working with the Flemish government on one of their key partnerships called the Vanguard Smart Health Partnership. So I was pleased when Niklas, you mentioned the regional dimension, so that's something we can come back to. We've also been involved in projects like Profit, we've mentioned some of the personalized medicine projects you mentioned, Malin. So hopefully I won't have to use any of that knowledge because my panel are going to ask and answer all the questions that we have to share with you today. Three elements to bear in mind. As Nina said, there is going to be 2 elements of Mentimeter, and then we'll have a word cloud, and the panel will be able to react to some of your inspiration. Obviously going to present the panel to you. Some will have 1 or 2 slides. Some have already presented to you today, so you know who they are, but we wanted to make sure you know who's here. So at the end, there is some time for Q&A. You can sharpen your thoughts and launch some difficult questions. But we've also got some structured questions, so I'll be reading out some questions for the panel. They have been warned, so that they shouldn't look too much like the rabbit in the headlights, but there's enough of you, so I'm sure we'll have some answers. So I don't know who's got the button for the first slides for presenting yourselves, but I think it's María Cristina. You're going to present yourself first, and the Era for Health. Over to you.
Thank you very much for providing me this opportunity to attend this event. Thank you for the Belgian presidency for organizing this conference. And I would like to present you very briefly the Era for Health partnership that I am representing now on behalf of my institution, the Institute of Health Carlos III from Spain. Next slide, please.
You've got the button, yep.
Sorry. Thank you. Sorry. So the Era for Health partnership englobes 33 partners from 22 different countries, all across Europe, even including third countries. And in 7 years, we are creating a funding body for launching joint transnational goals in different research priority areas that are included in our strategic research and innovation agenda, which covers very different research areas such as cardiovascular diseases, in the nanomedicine field, nutrition, preventive, and health strategies. So far, we have already launched 4 joint transnational goals in all those research areas that I mentioned before. And 2 of them have been already successfully funding projects, and 2 of them are still on evaluation procedure. Additionally, the Era for Health partnership is developing also the framework to support and funding multinational investigator-initiated clinical studies. We will enter very soon, next year, in a second phase of our partnership, in which we foresee to launch a specific dedicated goals for funding those clinical studies initiated by investigators. With this aim, we will be launching a pilot call on these clinical studies by the end of this year. We have analyzed so far the bottlenecks on launching those clinical studies, which are the funding mechanisms more suitable to support them, and also exploring collaborations with the regulatory stakeholders, such as the European Medicine Agency. Additionally, we have done other activities, such as development of RRI guidelines, capacity building activities, etc. And that's all by my side. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. I'll just come and take the remote from you. Right. Gerda, I think you're next, Gerda, to present yourself.
Yes.
Green button.
Thank you. So my name is Gerda Geyer. I'm here for presenting very briefly the co-funded partnership on transforming health and care systems. It's a new co-funded partnership. We started in January 2023, although we were building on the experiences of pre-existing initiatives, which was the AAL program, the Active and Assisted Living program, the To Reach funded project, the EIP on AHA, and More Years, Better Lives. So what we are doing with our 63 partner organizations coming from 23 countries, including 9 regions, is to having a focus on supporting the transition towards more resilient, innovative, and people-centered health and care systems. So at the focus of our endeavor is the value for the persons, for the citizens, for the stakeholders, for the patients. We have a roadmap that is organized along 3 major strands of activities. One is filling the knowledge gaps with respect to health and care systems. So here we are trying to define, together with our stakeholders, the most important problems and priorities to be addressed in our funded course. We are then, that was too fast. Yes. We are then trying also to learn from practices, to learn about the what, the why, and the how. Then we are also having a strand on boosting health and care systems, where we are focusing on competence building, on supporting the policy level to taking the right decisions, and on recommendations to the policy level. And this third strand is on implementation and transfer, where we are focusing on testing, validating solutions, and doing evaluations. What is underlying all those activities is our effort to strengthen also the ecosystems. Ecosystems have been already mentioned several times today, so it is kind of a buzzword. What are we trying to do with ecosystems is to work on 3 different strands. On the one hand, we are building up a quality network of transformative ecosystems. So that's ecosystems that already have shown that they have aligned their strategies, their actions, and their aims within the health and care system so that they could reach some impact. The second activity is that we try to support our funded projects in embracing an ecosystem-wide approach, which means for us that the value chain is covered within the consortia, or if that is not possible, within additional activities like policymakers most probably will not be part of the consortium, but then within an advisory board, you can take them into consideration, you can see that the strategies are included, and that you focus the project and the approach that you have in the right way. And the third strand with respect to the ecosystems is that via our partner organizations, we are reaching out to the national, regional, and local levels, because of course it's there where the actual transformation of health and care systems is put in place. So our pillar system within the partnership is a 3-fold one. Our main aim is to fund R&D and I projects, but we also have partners aboard that do research or that reach out to the different kinds of stakeholders or are responsible for the national, regional, and local agendas and strategies. That's covered in Pillar 1 with the science and innovation into policy and practice activities, and in Pillar 3 with the support to the transferability and strengthening of ecosystems. More later on. So that's my contact details. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gerda. Jens Habermann, I shall ask that. Thank you. We'll share some insights to your experience.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me. I'm Jens Habermann, Director General of BBMI-ERIC, which is the European research infrastructure for biobanking and biomedical resources in health and life sciences. But I'm not sitting here on behalf of BBMI-ERIC alone, but also for the life science research infrastructures per se. And I would like to give you a little bit an insight how we can actually support partnerships. So maybe let's start with BioMeric as it reflects also the other European infrastructures in a distributed form. And this is basically how most of the life science infrastructures are set up. So you can see here the individual orange dots, which are reflecting our over 400 biobanks in the networks, which are then coordinated by national hubs or national nodes. And through those national nodes, all the biobanks are connected then to the international network and the international level. And this goes for most of the life science research infrastructures. The names might be different, might be national hub or national node, but we are really distributed, most of us. And this is bridging regional, local, national, and international activities overarching. And just imagine if you do this now basically with many, many partners focusing on different aspects which are complementary. And this is actually the Life Science Research Infrastructure Board. We have 15 research infrastructures, and we are providing access to world-class facilities, samples, data, tools, services, you name it. And I think supporting cutting-edge research, giving access and also education, capacity building, these are all activities which we are doing together. Every one of us focus on a very specific activity and topic, but very complementary. And I think this is a very strong and powerful group working together. The LSRI group is the largest among the ERIC Forum, which contains at the moment 28 European research infrastructure consortia. And I think over the years we have been really closely working together to close gaps in terms of service provision for the wider community. Now, give you one example where most of us basically are working together, which is CanSurf providing cutting-edge cancer research services. Here we are really defragmenting the European research area. As we are bringing together these 13 infrastructures, we have selected 150 service providers, and these could be biobanks locally, or omics technologies, or imaging activities, clinical trial guiding, and so on. So these 150 service sites are providing 400 plus services in these 10 different research fields. And in the first calls that we brought out, we received more than 150 applications from 32 countries. Obviously, the data generated in these projects will then fuel into the European Open Science Cloud and Understanding Cancer platform. So what we have achieved in this project is basically one single entry point for the scientists, for the clinicians, scientists, so to say. So they can access all the different tools, expertise across these 13 life science research infrastructures wherever they need it. And one more aspect is that we have generated one European Molecular Tumor Board network, which is really neutral, so it invites everyone, which has attracted over 250 clinician scientists worldwide so far. So what I really would like to say is that this Life Science Strategy Board or the Life Science infrastructures have all the assets to support partnerships, and BioMeric is very proud to be part of the Personalized Medicine Partnership. But we are generically set up. So all the infrastructures can support all different topic domains with the setup that we have been proven to run very efficiently in CanSurf. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jens. Marc, would you just like to introduce yourself and then we'll pass it down to the end.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I didn't prepare any slides because after the break I think I have to present two of the projects that we are running. So I'm Marc Van Den Bulcke. I'm the head of the Cancer Center at Scienzano. We're one of the co-hosts of this event. And Scienzano is the National Public Health Institute of Belgium, and the Cancer Center is in fact a unit within the organization that is supporting the cancer policy in Belgium. So my perspective will be mainly coming from cancer, but on the other hand, we are very much involved in all the genomics initiatives, the GDI, the Genome of Europe, together with our colleagues here in Belgium of the genetic centers, of the pathology, the clinical biology, the research institutes. So it will be two perspectives. Okay. And then my role here, I thought, as we are I would say the representative of Belgium in many of the joint action of the EU for Health programs, so the EBCP plan. We are trying now to bridge a little bit between what is going on more on the policy side to the research, so with the partnerships, and this is one of the things that we are going to try to build up in the next coming years.
Okay, thank you. Wolfgang, Malin said a few words about yourself.
So yeah, my name is Wolfgang Ballensiefen. I'm from Germany, and I'm the coordinator of the European Partnership for Personalized Medicine. And I like to thank Marin, because she did take you already on the journey of the aims and perspectives and the tools of EP Permit. And that will be quite challenging. And I'm hoping that also the cooperation and communication, maybe first the communication and then the cooperation between not only the partnerships related to health, but also to some joint actions, especially in the personalized medicine area, will definitely support what we are doing.
Excellent. Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about first. In terms of the panel, Niklas, you presented yourself already. Carmen, you also had a shot at presenting yourself. But I'd like to start with you, Carmen, on the first question. And it was, Wolfgang gave us some ideas what we want to talk about. It's how can the partnerships we see here and also in the room under sort of cluster one work together, use the word collaborate in your speech. I think it's one of the first words you use. We don't want perfect alignment, but we want to ensure that we don't operate in silos. So I need to find you a microphone. No, this is mine now. We've got sweaty and hot now.
Thank you. Yes, so this is a very good question. Actually, we, first of all, I don't want to put burden on the partnerships, which, by the way, have already quite a workload and quite a pressure in their shoulders. We have so high expectations about all of them. But I would like to put that also on our shoulders. So in the European Commission, we are doing a lot to identify what could be, for example, what Malin said, one of the things he said in her talk is that first thing they do is to identify needs. And then to see who should be the actor that tackle that needs. This is our everyday job. We look at these partnerships as a toolbox, and we spend a lot of time trying to see which could be the best instrument in order to do a specific thing. Because it's extremely important, as I said also earlier, that we are very careful on the use of resources, that we don't duplicate efforts. Also, it's very important for us that we have invested a lot on research and innovation, not only us, many other funders. And it's important that the translation into the clinical practice is really accelerated. And for that, we really need that collaboration. And we need that those different partnerships and actors intervene as perfectly fit machines in the moment, in precise moment where they should take a result, a research result in innovation, and bring it further to the next actor. This is very difficult, and we are in the process to see how it will be the best way to do it. But I think, on the positive side, is that this is much improved as regards to the past. First of all, because already ourselves in the European Commission, we are co-creating a lot between different DGs. And proof is that when we talk about the ecosystem of the partnership, we do include as well the joint actions, for example, funded by You for Health, or the projects funded in the context of the Digital Euro program. Because it doesn't make sense that we spend a lot of efforts in funding research and innovation, and afterwards, the same actor, so the European Commission, does not build on those efforts in order to further implement. I think that another reason for pushing for those interactions is because all of them are somehow struggling with some, with the same or many common aspects for a successful implementation. One of them is the trust, is the data, is the developments as concerns the skills of those who will need to implement on the findings and on the results. So it doesn't make any sense that just, for example, the rare disease partnerships, we haven't talked about that, but it's another actor in this big ecosystem, thinks about how to empower healthcare professionals in the future in order to be able to use all these technologies. And the personalized medicine does the same, without them trying to see together how to best tackle that issue at the same time. So for many different reasons, we think that it's super important that they align and collaborate together.
I think you mentioned the need for addressing common challenges at the same time together. And one of those, Gerda, I think you mentioned it, or indeed a number of you mentioned the joint calls. Maybe to the question to you, Gerda, do you think there is possibility for partnerships organizing joint calls between themselves, finding common thematics that would pick up some of the challenges that maybe are common to all of you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Carmen, for appreciating the effort that is already done by the partnerships, because of course it seems to be so easy to launch calls, but in effect it is a lot of work, because there are so many organizations back home in our countries who all have to do an effort, and aligning those countries already is quite an effort. Then combining different partnerships might be overwhelming. I guess that it might be possible for some very specific topics, but I think the strategy has to be well thought of before you invest resources into that. And I think better and more at hand ways for aligning and for collaboration might be like in capacity building, for example, or also in sharing information for training, or in doing workshops regarding specific topics where you can see that there is a common interest. Or what we do in our THCS partnership is to establish a network of ambassadors, where we invite also the other partnerships to come together on a regular basis to be informed about what we are doing, but then also report on what they are doing. So I think this kind of communication and constant interaction in certain intervals is a very important thing, just to learn about what the other partnerships are doing and to promote what you are doing without investing too many resources to it. The combined calls, yes, I mean, you could think about it in terms of maybe also cascading in terms of the innovation cycle. Like one partnership does the basic research call, another one a more implementation-oriented thing, or also maybe something around ecosystems, because we all more or less have to include the whole value chain of stakeholders. So I think there as well some synergies might be possible.
Well, already the idea of the Belgian presidency bringing you all together is a start. So
right. But the resources
points.
Always have to be taken into consideration and not demand too much in that sense, of course.
But I like the idea of targeting different outputs from different funding streams or different activities. It could be a way.
Right.
Cristina, from the Area for Health, you also mentioned the role of the calls in bringing people together. What's your view on the cooperation potential?
Yes, I agree with Gerda that inter-partnership calls is quite complicated, because we are already struggling to align all the national member states that participate in our calls. But I agree with Gerda that it will be very interesting to develop specific synergies. In fact, in Era for Health, we have created a synergies group to identify the synergies that we can develop further with the different European initiatives, not only partnership. Solution specifically for health partnership could be to create a specific hub for all of us, for all the partnership, to working together in order to avoid, I think what is important is to avoid that we cover the same in our different calls, that we have complementarities. In that sense, Era for Health has created a coordination and liaison mechanism to specifically contact with those initiatives that will fund clinical studies initiated by investigators, such as the ERDERA partnership, for example, or maybe other initiatives. And in this way, we can share the developed framework that we are working on that, and also to avoid funding gaps among the different calls and not to overlap the topics that we will launch. And I think, additionally, I think that an important fact is not only interact among the European initiatives, but also to try to foster the alignment among the researchers that we have already funded in our calls. For example, through early career networks or capacity building activities that can be created in a common way among the partnerships, and also fostering cross intersectorial collaborations.
Mm. I think, Carmen, in your speech earlier today, you mentioned the cross-sectorial dimension, and I think within the Flemish Smart Health Partnership in Vanguard, they're in their health domain, but we have other sectoral agri-food, so we can look at preventative dimensions, we can look at the nanomaterials, and they foster this collaboration. But the collaboration with the private sector, Niklas, you talked a lot about the core, the key role the private sector play in the IHI. I'm not going to try and do what we tried earlier, but what's your take on the private sector feeding into the work of the different partnerships you heard about earlier?
Yeah, no, I think we have a lot of things in common, and indeed we have actually started conversations with several of the partnerships, including Transforming Health and Care. And I think this is part, if we think about the industrial sectors, the way they interact with the public sector is actually quite different. If you think of the pharmaceutical sector, medicines are approved, I mean, on the European level, and then they make their way into the national systems. We saw that earlier today in the presentation from Christoph and Kalle. If we think of medical technologies, they are often procured at the regional level directly by the healthcare system. So I think it's important when we set up our projects and calls to make sure that they are designed so that we also allow that cross-sectorial collaboration, both between the different sectors of the healthcare industry, but also making sure that the relevant national partners or regional partners can be involved. And
you mentioned a lot the big multinationals, the Sanofis, and one of the examples you quoted was from a startup. What about the SMEs, which are, as every statistic shows us, it's 99.9% of the European economy. How do the SMEs work within IHI, that you could maybe share some insights?
Yeah, so our funding program is a little bit special. So essentially, the large companies contribute in kind, whereas smaller companies, and there are some rules about what is a smaller company, but smaller companies can actually be beneficiaries. And so they join in with the beneficiary side of the consortium. And indeed, that's what we typically see with SMEs, is that they come in as a part of the beneficiary side, joining in with the academics and the other public partners.
Okay, thank you. Wolfgang, maybe just the last insight to this first question from one of Europe's most established partnerships. Your take?
Well, it's not. I think there's others first. But anyway, I would like to come back to the kind of how they can interact. I mean, there's about communication, support, and maybe joint activities, maybe stepwise. And collaboration is the last one. Just keeping in mind that I like what you said, that the researchers in the different areas learn not only transnational, but also learn from the different partnerships, that they might go from one to the other to continue their development. You have already an advantage when you have, even if you're not funded in these kind of transnational calls, you have an advantage by the exchange, and you have an advantage for other calls from the Commission to be successful. The other thing is from the partner side, from the partnerships. Most of the partnerships, at least in the health cluster, they are from funders and ministries. So most of and there's a limited number in Europe, and maybe beyond, some kind of beyond when they are associated, who can actually join these kind of partnerships. And also there is a kind of a cooperation, communication going on. Let's say for the DLR, for the ministries, for the Ministry of Health and Education and Research, we communicate within our institution between the people who are working for the different partnerships, and we learn from each other. I mean, I'm asked now from the brain health partnership, how do you do this, what you should consider when you do set up something, but nevertheless, we all know we are all partnerships, but we are all different, which is good. So that's important. I think when it comes to personalized medicine, I'm already happy that there's a personalized prevention call in the transforming healthcare system. So it's in there somehow. I'm also happy that in EHI, I call it EHI, it's even easier. There's also personalized medicine up in the different calls. But I also see a continuation when we do have successful consortia, but not only research, also the other steps. Let's say when it comes to policy, but also when it comes to industry, you have to convince, you have to offer and convince. That's the only way that you, for example, take it up. So if most of your projects in EHI are industry-driven, perfectly fine. But if they find something in ERA permit, which was the project before EP permit or EP permit, which they are interested, they might take it up. But we have to make the system that they know about this. That's the thing. The same with transforming healthcare system. I see very well, and I said that already some years ago when both were not existing. I see pilots going on in the regional context when it comes to personalized medicine, going into shaping the transforming the healthcare systems actually. And I should not forget. I'm sorry to talk to so long, but I should not forget if you succeed in ERA for Health with transnational clinical trials. This is a big thing to drill. We can go there and maybe do something even together. Or maybe take this up and they do a call with the same funders for personalized medicine trials. I can see that very well.
No, I think you highlighted two key elements within your partnerships, the quality of the communication, the capitalization, and then making sure the good practices, the knowledge that may be relevant to a different stage in another partnership is quickly transferred. And I think Carmen used the word co-creation. At some points we can maybe facilitate that happening in a more structured way. But now, all of you sat up there in the dark, you have to now think about what you would like to put on the Mentimeter board. So the question, you can read, what are the most urgent needs in research and innovation for personalized medicine and its uptake? So hopefully you all did take the QR code when it was offered to you earlier. If not, then you'll have to wait the next time, but I think, there it is. Thank you, Julian. So once we have a few words, then the panel will be free to fight over their microphones and comment on some of these messages.
Okay. I forgot something. We did already support between the partnerships because we did invite other members of other partnerships to support us in getting this RIA done. I mean, all of the partnerships, they have a SRIA and they will have at least one, maybe two updates. So I just want to finish off with saying that by communication, we can definitely also use the update of the SRIAs, all of our SRIAs, to support each other. And I think that will be definitely of value. And to just put something very high, we might even think of putting something together, maybe not a SRIA, but maybe a joint document on healthcare and research and innovation in the future. I don't know, that might be an option, because we all tackle similar things from a different angle, and that might be of benefit to have something like that.
It was worth reminding us. Carmen, you want to respond to the word cloud? Oh. Thank you.
Yes, I was trying to follow, but it goes so quickly. It's great to see so much engagement. Actually, I see their coordination, but I think I have already talked about coordination. I just wanted to mention, for me, the most urgent needs, both for the research, but for the uptake, is data. And I will explain why. First of all, data is essential for clinical research. It's important to ensure, I mean, without data, there is no research. So I think that the landscape of the European health data space is extremely attractive, and I hope we'll be able to benefit from that as soon as possible. But we also need to think on what to do already today before, you know, the European health data space is finally implemented. We are still long to go. But also for the uptake, because let's not forget that we need evidence. And the evidence comes from the data. So that is very critical. We know that there are so many expectations, and we know how there are best practices and already a lot of citizens, patients benefiting from personalized medicine approach, but for make it to benefit to a much broader population, there is need for evidence. There is need for evidence of a certain quality, evidence that is agreeable by those who need to judge, like the regulators, health technology assessment. So I think data in all their different perspective is crucial. Also, data from the perspective of synthetic data. Let's not forget that in some cases we are talking about very reduced populations. So I think for me, data is still the one of the most crucial needs for both for the research and for the uptake of personalized medicine approaches.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I don't think we'd be surprised to see the words coordination, collaboration, and funding. So I think those, we don't need to respond to those. I think that's given what we're talking about. I also see a lot of messages about public engagement, the awareness raising of these issues. How relevant is that to, Niklas, you want to respond?
Yeah, no, I think that's important. Another word I saw coming past is patient-centric. And I think that's a really exciting area, is these patient-reported outcomes and the patient-centric devices. And so really trying to capture the individual patient's experience of the disease and turn that into a valid biomarker for treatment, I think is a really exciting field of research. And we have a range of projects in that within IHI, which I think are really interesting, not only in sort of the poster child of personalized medicine, which is oncology, but I think even in fields of depression, this is really interesting, and you can use these devices to sort of see when patients are going into exacerbations or severe periods, and you can pick up on that and put in targeted treatment for those individuals at the right time, which I think is really quite exciting and potentially extraordinarily beneficial for the individual.
Thank you. Marc raised his hand first, and then Gerda.
Well, I would like to at least give some feedback on what comes back from the public, where they say coordination is the most challenging thing, and I think it's true. I think we're all facing the huge amount of projects that are coming, that are all parallel. Most of them are parallel, maybe there's some phasing out, and somewhere you have to bring that together. And I was discussing that with Malin, and from a country's perspective or from a regional perspective, all these outputs somehow have to be integrated into the systems that are locally there. So I think what we especially, and from the Commission side, I think the idea of launching missions was really interesting. It's a very interesting concept. But what I'm missing a little bit in the missions is the coordination of the missions. Who drives the missions? Because we have the program, but and I think it's due to the configuration of Europe. It's difficult that somebody takes the lead, because we're always referring to Moonshot, Apollo, but there was one country who took, and so that's something that we're now learning. And then the other thing is that we have programs that are running mainly by RTD, some by Connect, some by Santé. DG Reform is involved, work is involved. So at a certain moment, you have to bring that all together. And there also, I think, we need to. So I fully understand that the word coordination, and in my talk, I will give you also, Commission is doing, we're now building in Europe a number of things that could be useful in the next step, but we have to find the mechanism how we will iterate and align all these things, because it's nice to talk about synergies, but synergies demand time, and the time is always missing, because they say you do synergies and you get 3 person months. It's not that way you can do that. So that is also something. Also, I was happy to see, because I was missing that a little bit in the circle from that Marlon must present, the implementation sciences. I think research could definitely help us in developing the models. How do we do implementation science? Because that is something that we're missing a little bit.
Thank you, Marc. Gerda,
Yes, thank you. I would like to say a word about the second part of the question relating to the uptake. There are the key words of implementation and communication and ecosystems. And I think what mostly is a bit underestimated in funding projects is the resources that project consortia should invest in communicating and keeping in touch with all the stakeholders that are necessary for the final implementation of the solution or the approach that they are developing in terms of an ecosystem-wide approach that starts with the end users that you should include at the project beginning, at the concept stage, so to say, then throughout the project duration, throughout the iterations, but it includes also like multipliers, like policymakers. I think it's not enough to produce good results and then try with recommendations to convince policymakers that this is the right way to make a decision, that then they are doing evidence-based decisions. It's important to include them before in the communication to steer the projects and the solutions and the development in a direction that is already strategy-based and that is already in line with what is needed, not only by the policymakers, but also by the end users and by the other kinds of stakeholders that will be necessary for supporting what you are developing. So that's a process that should go throughout the project duration and will help the implementation and the uptake of solutions.
I think we could go on all afternoon with these words. I will just add my little comment. I would have put the words co-funding in here somewhere, because I think that's one of the success stories of your projects, is that there's the leverage effect. You know, if the Commission gives you €1, your industries will give you €1, some will give you in kind, some will, and one becomes more. I mean, we know Europe is confronted to the big blocks. You know, you mentioned, Mark, the Apollo. One country did it. Today we have 27 countries trying to create this word cloud, and we've got two big economic powers who are doing it on their own, and their economic growth is faster, their investment in artificial intelligence and health is faster, etc. So we have to simplify our word cloud anyway. Right. Question number 2, we won't get to all of them, so the panel doesn't have to worry about staying here all night. But Jens, you had quite an impressive network of you know, the biomedical research facilities there. How do you see them, let's say, interacting with the different partnerships? You know, are there any ways to accelerate the collaboration and cooperation?
Yeah, I think it's touched base on what we just discussed right now. And I think, first of all, maybe not everyone is aware, but this European research infrastructures are based on member states. Member state contribution, which basically provide the core budget to build these infrastructures, to maintain them. And the European Commission substantially supports developments which will then be implemented in the infrastructure and maintained again through the core budget from the member states. So I think it's really key to see what is already there and make use of it. And I think it comes back to what is here coming from the audience, coordination, collaboration, basically, which I think we can help to defragment, also make use of what is already there and use synergies to what is already there, not reinvent certain things. And if we do that, I think we can save resources on one hand, but also accelerate developments on the other hand. And using these wider networks for dissemination, capacity building, but also even for implementation, I think this is a big issue that we probably all have in the partnerships is, for instance, coming back from the headquarter level, international level, if something is working well, and then bring it back to the local level is important. And I think just giving one example of the hospital integrated biobanks, they have been very instrumental to bridge between the clinical care on the one side and the research side on the other hand, and thereby supporting molecular tumor boards to be set up and really helping to find a therapy guidance for patients. So I think there is a lot to gain in engaging these infrastructures, and I think it's also, you talked about basically co-funding that goes for most of the stakeholders, I would say, but not necessarily for the research infrastructures, because we are paid by member states, supported by the EC, so is right pocket, left pocket, so to say. That's very difficult.
And we often say in Europe, we're very good at funding infrastructure, but not so good at funding the implementation of the resource. And then back to what Gerda was saying about the uptake, you need the particular infrastructure research laboratory to be working with a fully staffed and, as Carmen said, the skill sets that are relevant. Anyone else want to react?
First, a very short comment on the moon thing. I mean, Airbus is doing better than Boeing at the moment, so it's also about quality. And the other thing is, maybe the researchers would not like what I say now, but I think if you look at research, I think research is doing well. I think funding is doing well and needs collaboration. But I think if you go the next step, if you go into the innovation system, and I mean, you can maybe comment on that later, it's not only about funding, it's about money as well, but from a different perspective. And you have to be successful there. And then funding will not help you in this step. And also funding will not help you in the implementation into the healthcare system. Also, money is a part of this discussion, but from other people and institutions, and it's getting complex. So again, what I said before, I think you need to offer and convince. And I think, and I comment now on what you said, Gerda, I think you have to be careful, like with the data and the poor guy who is doing actually his work in the hospital. You cannot put everything on the researcher. So you need a structure which is supporting the researcher or research teams when they have achievements beside publications, and there is really the perspective of having an innovation. There the industry steps in, or SME step in, and we try to step in there as well with our little possibilities in EP Permit. But then the next step is maybe even more complex. And the further you go towards the implementation into the healthcare system, the healthcare systems are complex anyway, you know all this, but you also need offer and convince. So if you convince, coming back to the regional context, if you convince in a regional context, you do a prototype in a regional context, then others might take them up with maybe complex nationwide healthcare systems. But you have to convince, and this is my last comment, and you also have to convince the citizens and patients. There should be a push from their side that they want the best possible treatment option, prevention option. And this is something about communication as well. So I think when you go further, although I can understand the funding is in the center of some of the people who give the word, I think to be successful in the end and have benefit for society, people, and profit for the industry, we need to go the other steps, and we need to support the other steps, which is a complex thing because every step you go further, you have more people and institutions being involved.
I think you highlighted one of the next questions the panel is going to address is how we align the strategic research and innovation agenda with the joint actions and back to creating more uptake and the ability to actually change on the ground, whether you're at the national level or the regional level. Does anyone want to share any insights on how maybe the alignment between the strategic research innovation agenda and joint actions? Marc? Yeah.
Well, I think I think what you said, if you want to convince the people in the healthcare system, you will need data. At a certain moment, you will need data, you will need evidence, so that's one point. But there is one thing that probably is emerging is the piloting, and I think we should address much more time and options for running pilots, and I see it in the joint actions now, because before pilots everybody was a bit reluctant on pilots, but now we are part of 6, 7 large joint actions, and I will come back on after the break, and there is a lot of pilots in there. But the thing is that we still do not have really the good model to learn from the pilots what is working, what is not working. So that's something that we will probably have to develop now, but it's there. So the joint actions are, and the advantage in the joint actions is that by definition you have the member states official bodies sitting in there, so they are supposed to listen. It's not probably in every country the same, But at least in Belgium, we are in direct contact both with the Ministry of Health, with the agency that does the reimbursement, and we also have the links with the regions for everything that deals with prevention and screening. So there is the links to, but this is important that you have it in your country. But I think really in the partnerships, also it would be interesting to have piloting exercises. And we can bridge with, and I can tell you also in the joint actions, there are innovations being piloted. So there is a bridge between the two.
Niklas, a bridge, and then Gerda will Gerda next.
Yeah, no, just so how do we align the agendas? And I think that's the question is, what do you align them around? And that's perhaps the value of meeting like the one today, the presidency events, is to articulate a couple of high-level principles or outcomes or objectives, and then we can start to align the partnerships and the initiatives around those. But I think the other part, and coming back to what Marc talked about, the implementation science, so once you have done that, I think you can actually experiment a little bit. I think we all want the same thing. We want to see new innovations coming out in the system, and we want that to benefit the patients and the society at large. Exactly how we do that, we might experiment in very different ways within the different partnerships, because we are actually partnerships with quite different stakeholders. And I think it's that coming back to how do we then share the learning at the end and build the next generation after that to build on those experiences is an important part.
Gerda, yeah.
Thank you. I think a good step towards aligning is also to understanding well what the other partnerships do and then communicate within the own community. Like, for example, the second call of THCS was on prevention and on taking up solutions that are already there and on doing the next steps towards implementing them, always having in mind the larger ecosystem-wide approach. So when then, for example, EpiPermed develops a new approach for personalized medicine adoption, then of course in one of the THCS calls that fits the focus, this could be taken up and then brought further towards the implementation, doing in new consortia the validation, the evaluation and the monitoring of the solution. So I think there a good alignment is possible. On the other hand, also THCS can contribute to the other partnerships by providing methodologies, like for example an implementation framework that could then be tested in other partnerships. So a lot of alignment is possible, but you need to have the understanding and the communication about it so that the communities are aware of the possibilities and we include the keywords in our calls. But then, of course, it's very good to also have the cascade of the different levels of funding down to the implementation where you really need the larger ecosystem to be there.
Carmen, do you want to comment on this question of alignment between the implementation actions and the
No, actually not. I was thinking about something else, so I can come back afterwards in another question.
Fine. Well, I'm going to ask one more question to the panel, and then we'll have a Mentimeter next. The question I'd like to ask you now is, a number of the partnerships makes a strong focus on the European Commission, large companies, but also member states. A number of you have active partnerships from regional authorities. I was wondering, are there any lessons you could, or insights you can share on successful regional engagement in some of the partnerships that you're working with? Marc, you're nodding at me, so.
Yeah, because you're looking at the partnership, but even in the joint actions, often it's a region that is dedicated as the authority, so this works. And then, because it's, as already said several times, the healthcare systems in the countries are differently organized. So in some cases it's the regions that are in charge, in others it's federal, and then research is the reverse. We have the reverse. So I think, yeah, it's not only in the partnerships that regions can play a role, but then it means also that probably if it's research that is regional or healthcare that is regional, you have to think differently. That means that you bring sometimes, when you make projects, very diverse, different types of organizations together. But it's possible not only in the partnerships, but also in the joint actions. So there is no restriction.
Cristina, yeah.
If I may, yeah, I think that the active participation from the regional governments in the partnership is key for fostering the implementation. In most of the countries, the healthcare system is managed by the regional governments, so they have an active role to play there. And I think that it has been really changing in the last years. In Eranets, it was not so active, the role, and now in the partnerships or in other European initiatives, they have get on board. And I think that's good news. I think in PPERMED, also in Era for Health, or Transforming Healthcare System, in all the partnerships, especially in those of health, they have been an active engagement.
In the Vanguard project I mentioned that the Flemish government are leading, they are using that to stimulate engagement with the smart specialization platform. So it's DG Regio. They have worked with DG RTD on the innovation valleys. And I think, Carmen, you mentioned the importance of the discussions between DGs. I mean, health doesn't sit in a DG Health and never emerges. We look for synergies, and not just for funding, but for implementation and creating SMEs and with their clusters, etc. So I think there are some good examples in other DGs as well that we can bring into the research and agenda. Go ahead, Wolfgang.
It's not only the regions, but also smaller countries, because usually it's easier to implement things there. But it's not only because of the healthcare system being regional in Italy and Spain, for example, but I think also when it comes to the innovation system, there's a very close collaboration of the kind of industry clusters in these regions or smaller countries. And I think that's a huge benefit. And these regional or smaller country governments, they see actually the advantage. That if they go forward and they really do this in their context for the healthcare system, but also for the innovation system and the local industry and SMEs, they have a benefit. And I'm very happy, or we are very happy, that we have 12 regions on board of EP Permit, which is very convincing. Also because they see, as you said, health as a very crucial topic when it comes to the regional and small country perspective, because we all want to be healthy.
Prevention agenda is one of their top agendas. Carmen, and then we're going to move to the Mentimeter, so we get ready.
Yeah, I think that this is a very good question about the regions, because many times they are closer to the implementation, right? And most of the best practices around personalized medicine are happening at regional level, not all, but many. But because I think that there is one aspect that maybe we have not sufficiently strengthened, or is that the clinical engagement that was also in the prior Mentimeter. So the closest we are to the implementation, the better. Because for the uptake of these approaches, the healthcare professionals need to be on board. So for this, there are many considerations. One can think about the demand-driven innovation, for example. It's a very good way to involve them. But one can think as well about how to develop the trust. We are talking about convergence of technologies. We are talking about technologies just per se. From the European Commission, we are doing a lot about how to ensure that the trust will be there. Because if it's not there, if doctors do not understand how these algorithms for artificial intelligence are done, they will not be used. And then everything what we are saying, it will be for nothing. So I think it's very, very important to have the clinical engagement, and therefore the regional component is very important because often they are closer. Also because the regions are in this triangle of innovation, but also education. So they are the perfect actor in order to foster these approaches.
Any other comment?
Very short comment. I mean, medical societies are crucial as well, because they do the guidelines. And the guidelines then again are important for the GP and the providers. Unfortunately, there's no medical society for personalized medicine, but we try to communicate with all the medical societies which kind of reach into this topic.
Okay, thank you. Well, your last job, dear panel, is to have a look at this question, which is how can we make the activities in the personalized medicine more impactful? So the audience are giving you some tips. I noticed coffee appeared on the last one. I didn't want to say it, but I was at a conference a few weeks ago when the name Norbert, and Norbert is a very traditional French name, and it appeared, and everybody else just seemed to be focusing on Norbert. At the end of the conference, they were saying, please, Norbert, show yourself. And this poor gentleman, Hungarian, I think, came up and said, I don't know why my name appears here. But so coffee, that's probably coming a bit later. But panel, are there any words here that trigger a desire for greater impact? I can see one here, focusing on unmet needs. It's almost like the challenges are put there and the missions are put there for working. One of the words that I would have written there, as a humble moderator, is public procurement. And tomorrow, Vasilis will join me in a session looking at how public procurement can drive not only, the spending in the most innovative way, but also focus on particular missions. And we have all these tools, pre-commercial procurement, PPI, et cetera, So that's the word I would have put on there. What word would you have put there? Go, which path the mic?
I love what you said, okay. And I would pass the floor to Marc to talk more. This is what I was mentioning about demand-driven innovation. It is key for the uptake, but yeah. I'm sure Marc wants to comment on that.
Well, it's part of my talk after the break, but I can already say so. We are actually some years ago with a consortium. We started to think about exploring pre-commercial procurement, and because it was something completely new to us, we spent, I think, 2 years understanding the process. But then we developed something, and indeed, it's something that may be interesting and that should be much more be integrated in the thinking of people who want to develop innovation that is useful for a particular group. And it should come probably also in the partnership as an exercise that you take definitely also with IHI. We're thinking of building on that, because I didn't mention, we are now at the stage with the joint actions to look at the industry. Because industry was never a partner in the joint action. Now we want to, because we need them, because we're going to implement. And if you go to implement, you cannot do everything on your own, so you need at a certain moment the industry. So we have to find a way how we can collaborate. But procurement is already something that is something going on. So, okay. And it was a very interesting journey. And in the beginning, I must say, after the 5th time having heard the explanation how the process, as we said, we knew. And then we had to make the tender, and then we realized we didn't know, but now we know. And now everybody is convinced, so I think it's really...
People need to know about it. Marc, just come along the line. Wolfgang, one reaction to the word cloud here, and then Cristina.
If I may, I will highlight the communication and the public awareness that appeared before. I think that partnerships and networks, we can foster this citizen engagement, this public awareness that personalized medicine will change the healthcare in the future, in the present, but especially in the future. So we have mentioned this morning about the policymakers, but the policymakers do what the public and the citizens demand. So I will highlight this communication purpose and making the patients and the citizens aware that this is a good approach for a better health.
Thank you, Cristina. One reaction from you, Wolfgang?
Just added value.
Added value, okay. Jens, what's your take on the last word cloud?
Well, focus on implementation. I think this is where the research infrastructures can support, specifically because they are participating due to their generic setup in different initiatives, partnerships, EHDS, EOS. So I think there we can basically help to facilitate even from that perspective on.
Thank you. Niklas?
So I'll stick with focus on implementation, but I think that also is an imperative to, as I said earlier, to bring in a broader set of actors. Okay. So it's not only the healthcare system, we might need to look at social science and organizational science, and really how do you drive transformation of organizations. And that might include how do you actually talk about the problem. There is some excellent social science research out of UK, where talking about how you approach minoritized groups in conversation to have good impact and so on.
Thank you. Gerda, your take on quickly on this last word cloud.
I think what is very crucial to come to more impact is to take into consideration the context factors much more, and to really have a broad range of stakeholders involved, and to continuously work and collaborate so that you can align your aims and your strategies.
Was one of the first messages you shared together. Carmen, your last thought, and this will be the final word of the panel.
I don't want to stand in between the coffee and us, so I will be very brief, but I think pilots is something that has been said by all, and that probably will be the source of important synergies between the co-funds in the future. And I also would like to maybe mention what was said this morning about sometimes bold decisions by policymakers.
Bolder.
I think that if any of the partnerships can influence in a way or in another politicians, we saw in the example of Germany, we have seen some years ago in the UK, sometimes bold decisions can change it all. So I think that that's something that maybe we can try to think on how we could have an easier discussion with those who can really change.
That's a great conclusion. So I'd just like you to thank our panel in the usual way, and very well done. Thank you.